Oh, hello there. Hope you guys are having a good summer. Just weeding the garden like a good father because my daughter's second birthday is tomorrow. But I have a gift for you this week because I have an interview with D.L. Mayfield, who is uprooting racism and fear in America. And I talked to her at the Festival of Faith and Writing back, it's a book. Talked to her back in the spring about her book, Assimilate or Go Home, Notes from a Failed Missionary on Rediscovering Faith. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear from DL. This is a longer video. It's not super technical or anything, so you can just leave it running while you do the dishes or whatever. And I hope that you are stimulated by DL's thoughts and inspired. And if you at all care about working with refugees, new arrivals, justice, or confronting the societal sins of Canadian and American culture, I cannot recommend this book enough. Here's my conversation with DL, and I will see you guys next week because I'm releasing a brand new project on this channel, which I'm very, very excited about. See you guys next Wednesday. Enjoy the conversation. DL Mayfield, I don't know your first name. I don't know if it's secret.
No, the DL stands for Danielle Louise. Yeah.
But you prefer DL? I'm here with DL.
In my real life, people call me Danielle. I'm
here with Danielle. We're in real life. And this is her book. If you haven't read it, it was excellent. Just finished it recently, and encouraging and awesome and sad, really sad.
Yeah.
Can you tell, just in case anyone's watching this and they're not sure who you are, a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about the book?
Yeah, so I was raised in an evangelical household in the US and wanted to be a missionary from a very young age. And I ended up going to Bible college and working with refugees while I was doing that.
Okay.
And I met this specific community of Somali Bantu refugees, and they totally changed my life to the realities of my country and what it means to love my neighbors, especially my neighbors who are new to me and to my country.
So one of the things I appreciated in the book was how honest you were. And I was curious about, so part of what these videos are, like I've been doing videos on life and faith, but I'm also writing a book and I'm trying to just talk to people that I found inspiring or interesting or helpful. And one of the things that struck me in all of your writing on your blog, but especially in this book, was the like intense amount of honesty, and then how you juggle that though, because like this is your life and it's the life of other people around you. And I guess I was wondering, like, well, how did you ride that line of being honest and transparent, but also I guess respecting other people's stories and leaving space for yourself to be a human?
Yeah, I think.
Did you do it?
The first thing I ever wrote was for a website called McSweeney's, and I wrote a column about being a fundamentalist Christian, going to Bible college, living and hanging out with Muslim refugees.
Okay.
And I really focused on how talking about the refugees and all this stuff, and eventually throughout the years I started to realize I'm not an expert on the refugee experience. I can't even speak to the complexities of what's going on with my friends. I actually always work with populations that have a hard time learning English through trauma, poverty. Most of them didn't go to school in their own country. These are just the populations I work with. So we weren't able to really have super deep, intense conversations. So it became very apparent that I needed to focus on myself. Like, I'm only the expert on my own story. So I think in the beginning I wanted to explain refugees to people, talk more about that, but in the end I just thought, I'm gonna write about myself, and what I know is that I grew up with a savior complex. Oh my gosh, you're an 18.
Right.
Like, you probably don't have God figured out.
Right. So I've heard the story of like, I'm 19, I'm going to save the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I planted a church at 23. It was
my gosh,
it was a bad idea. It was a bad idea. And then I've heard the like disenfranchised response to that, which is, oh, this was all about me and my ego and my need to prove something, and so, you know, screw the church or screw missions or screw Bible college and like forget all that stuff. And that's what like I really think was what impressed me in this writing and another writing you've done, is you seem to have gone a bit of a step further in your processing of this. Can you talk about that?
Well, I think that I still really believe that the Bible is obsessed with this concept of neighbor love, of loving your neighbor as yourself. And I think that in the Gospels, it shows us that the people who are are most responsive to the words of Jesus are the people on the margins of a society.
Yeah.
So for me, it's now like a two-pronged approach. One, I feel like my faith in God is directly tied to my proximity to the faithful. And the faithful in the Bible were the marginalized. So if I want to be close to God, if I want to experience who Jesus is and the work he's doing in our world, I need to be close to the people he always said he would be with, which is the poor, the oppressed, the brokenhearted.
But you don't seem to feel the need for them to be able to articulate that Jesus is near them.
No.
Cause
no, I totally lost that. At the same time, this is so hard to explain, but I will try and do it.
Sure.
I really believe in the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
And I really believe in the power.
But you went to a healing revival in this, which was a nice little moment.
Yeah, and I really believe in the Bible, and I really don't believe in my ability to communicate anything about God anymore. To people who are not from my background. I now kind of consider myself to be missionary to white American evangelicals.
which they're really talking about Jesus a lot.
But we do not follow the words and actions of Jesus. And the political policies that we support are in direct contradiction to the life and words of Jesus.
Right.
Like, we need to be evangelists.
Right.
To be disciples of Christ.
And the irony here is that sometimes the people we think we're going to bring the word to are the ones that convert us. And in your story, like, converted you to the way of Jesus.
It's so mystical to talk about, but one of my favorite authors is this woman, Dorothy Day. She founded the Catholic Worker, and she was just like, the best way to describe it is to say, I see the face of Christ in the poor that I serve every day. And so I spent my whole life, as a pastor's kid, all this stuff, hearing about Jesus. And I didn't experience him until I was in the homes of Muslim refugees. And I can't explain that.
Yeah.
I can't.
Who never would have used the name Jesus in a sort of Christian language.
Well, I mean, he's their prophet.
He's their prophet, but not as a Messiah.
Yeah, and so also being in their homes, I think, brought me to a crisis of belief in my own country, which led to some bigger questions surrounding inequality. Also, being friends with refugees, you are friends with people who come from the most war-torn places on earth. They bring these stories of trauma. I mean, any person who's alive would start to say, where's God in all of this? Is God good? Is God paying attention? And so also being in a relationship with them forced me to kind of confront those questions. I think many people come to a point in their life where they have to do that. For me, it was these relationships. And I came out on the other end saying, I think God's present. I think God is good. And I think things really suck in this earth, and that he's asking us to do something about that. It's the truth. She revealed to me the truth about God. And here's the thing, Muslims, white American evangelical Christians, like, we all believe lies about God. All of us. And we all need them to be revealed to us, right? And so I feel like I'm just on that journey. And I talk about that constantly with my Muslim friends, even to this day.
What's the response been? Like, how have people... Have you gotten weird comments? Have you gotten angry emails?
Well, a lot of people have been like,
positive feedback,
the elephant in the room is if I am trying to convert people or not still.
Right. And whose elephant is that? Is that
it's Christianity?
The Christian saying, well, are you still trying to do the mission of converting? And what's your response
Depending on what mood I'm in, depending on how honest I want to be. Because
be honest.
Okay, this is super honest.
Be so honest. There's no cameras or anything. Okay. No, be really honest, because that's helpful.
So I kind of already said this, but I no longer try to convert people to be a white Western evangelical Christian like myself. But I am very interested in obeying the Holy Spirit. And I believe that Jesus is a liberating force in our world. And so I'm just ready and available to talk about Jesus with my friends who are Muslim, with my friends who come from generational white poverty, with my evangelical middle-class friends. I think Jesus came to liberate all of us, and I want to talk about that. That being said, there's so many barriers for someone who comes from a culture and a religion so different from mine. I mean... And where you are playing the position of power in that relationship no matter what you do. I appreciate the tension, though. Because I think it's way too easy to just say, well, I don't care about Jesus doing anything in anyone's life. Which feels unfaithful to the revelation of God that we've been given. But then, it just doesn't work to shove it down someone's throat, or it ruins the relationship. And part of my work with my friends, my Muslim refugee friends right now, is this idea that as people from a Muslim culture, they understand that there are people within the culture who are just nominally religious.
Right.
And then there's people within Islam who want to follow God with their whole hearts.
Right.
And so I say that's America. The vast majority, this is my personal perspective, the vast majority are nominal Christians.
Right.
And there is this group of people that really want to follow God. I want to be one of those people that really want to follow God.
Yeah.
If you are one of the people that really want to follow God, like, let's talk about it.
Well, and maybe God's big enough to sort that out.
Right. But they understand that, and they are like, either they say like, yeah, I'm one of those people that wants to follow God. They're like, yeah, I'm just a nominal Muslim. You know what I mean? And so through that, we can kind of come to a point of understanding each other. And it also is helpful because, you know, many of them think everybody in America is a Christian. And so what happened a few weeks ago in our neighborhood is my friend, she wears a hijab, she was coming home from an English class with her 4 kids, crossing the street back to her apartment, and she got spit on by this guy in a pickup truck. And in my neighborhood, it's a really interesting mix of a recent influx of diversity, of immigrants, refugees, people looking for low-income housing, and then people who've been there for a few years, and they literally fly Confederate flags. Like, I don't live in the South, I live in Portland, Oregon. Yeah. They're flying Confederate flags. You know, it's just intense. So my friend got spit on, right, by this guy, and he was basically kind of saying, go home, you know, to your country, whatever. Yeah. And so it was really helpful for me to tell her, like, that's not somebody who's trying to follow God.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, and so having that framework of, there's all this cultural Christianity, I'm actually someone who's really trying to follow God, and do you want to do that with me?
Yeah, and it's pretty cool that they would get that because their own culture has the exact same thing. Like our cultures are similar.
And that's what they always say. They always like, that's just like our culture.
Right. Yeah. Right. We don't want to be associated with everyone that claims our own religious language.
Yeah. So they really get it, and that's been so helpful. And it also kind of, my other philosophy is sort of, you look for those people who are like kind of bursting to talk about God or to tell their stories, and you kind of go with that. A lot of people are just sort of in survival mode, and so I want to respect and honor that. And
they're not looking for.
We could probably talk about Jesus a lot more if we had affordable housing in our city.
Totally.
Is that terrible to say?
No, it's very, very true.
Yeah.
I mean, our city's going through the exact same. Like, we're a city of 550,000. Was all like ex-steel town poverty, and then because we had the 2 biggest steel factories, and then they shut down in the 70s and the 80s, and it was just like a whole generation of poverty. But then that meant really cheap housing, and so of course in the last 15 years people moved downtown. And like, I'm from our city, but I'm from the suburbs, like up on we have an escarpment in our city, so it's like on the top of the hill was the suburbs, and then down the hill was the downtown. And I grew up always thinking when people said downtown that everyone had a mountain in their city. I really thought, because like in my city it was downtown is scary when you go down the hill, but up here is fine, and there's the water.
Look at the optics of that. That is really
it's insane. So there's a wall, a 300-foot wall, and it's post-World War II housing in suburbs and lower city poverty, and then the water, Lake Ontario on the other end. So it squeezes the poverty in.
Wow.
But then what happened is people moved downtown. And like, the thing is, I moved downtown, like not trying to be a gentrifier, not trying to push people out, but our presence does disrupt things. Yeah. And it's more white poverty, like it's not heavily ethnic, like Canadian poverty works a little differently, I think. The ethnic pockets aren't quite as strong, even in a mid-sized city like ours. But even still, like, the poverty is being pushed to the sides of our city, and then new arrivals would come because it was cheap, but now they can't afford to be there, or they don't want to be because. So we just had we have this crisis where, like, the biggest issue right now, the biggest spiritual issue in our city is affordable housing. Because we have people that have lived in their house and in their neighborhoods for 40, 50 years, and now they can't afford to.
Yeah.
And the horrible thing is we are not clean from blood on our hands.
The more I start to believe that God really loves his beloved children, the more I've had to sort of assess how my own upbringing was really built on saying, actually, God only loves some.
But you don't spit on anyone to do it. Like, I spit on people all the time, accidentally usually, but like, it's so easy to just be like, oh, so, you know, screw that, because that's the worst. And you have a chapter about a faith healing ceremony that should be just like lampooned, and you're like, and these are good people just doing their best.
But isn't it beautiful that people are trying?
It is.
To follow God.
It is. It's just like.
Yeah. And I have I have an activist bent to me where I can be really severe and really hard on people. And one thing that's really great about writing is it actually opens me up to considering other perspectives. And so writing has been really helpful for me to see people in a more interesting way and to have curiosity for them.
Yeah.
So one thing that's interesting, I went to school to be a missionary, right? To study people, to be curious. And I really feel like I've had to now turn that back towards the church, to be curious, to study them. And I'm working on a second book. It's taken me a few years to get to the place where I want to write a second book again. And I have this sense that like, I can't write it unless I love the people I'm writing to.
You put that quote in a blog post you did. What was the line again? It was, I can't criticize something until I love it or something?
Yeah, it was like about the activists, like an activist can't criticize unless they love. And
that's so much harder than just being right.
It's so annoying.
Being correct.
It's so annoying that God wants us to do this deep inner work.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
But for me, you know, it's really tied to also forgiving myself. And so
because that's who you were.
Yeah. And so in the book, I'm like, I actually have compassion on myself. I think white supremacy is terrible. I think colonialism and imperialism is awful. I think I was a part of it. And I also have compassion on this girl that wanted to do good. You know?
Yeah, and I think in the deconstructionist kind of age that like anyone in an urban area or with like kind of a skeptical mind is probably aware of like all the doubt and the dark night of the soul and the kind of romanticization of all that. Like this romanticizing doubt and deconstruction. But there's something in that is like harder, but I think better in the end. Like to, I don't know. It's not to reconstruct it, it's to be able to just like articulate, yes, this is bad, but that's who I was. And to have compassion on yourself. Like that, I was 19 and I was naive, but like at least I tried. You know, like there's something pretty beautiful about showing up and being like, I'm gonna help.
Yeah, and I mean, it propelled me into these situations that changed my life. And so I do want to have compassion. This is kind of my new framework, right? I want to be loving and forgiving of people and still hold people accountable for their actions.
It's good.
That's a hard thing to do.
Those two things don't always go together.
So I want to love people, hold them accountable for their actions.
Okay, rapid fire before we're done. Can I ask a couple quick questions? One, because you have some wisdom and battle scars from a decade of doing this work. What's your wisdom to somebody who is feeling like I want to do radical good work for Jesus in the world, maybe they're a bit younger, like I really want to dive in, what would you say to them as kind of just a bit of wisdom?
I think the two most important discipleship issues that are super practical, and maybe this is just my phase of life, where are you going to live, right? And where are you going to send your kids to school?
Yeah, I got a 1.5-year-old and I'm suddenly like, let's live downtown. It's like,
if you want to start to get involved in the issues of inequality, which I'm obsessed with inequality, those two issues are amazing entry points. If you just start paying attention, where do you live? Who do you go to church with? Where do you shop? Who do you eat dinner with? Like, if you start to notice how segregated you are, then you've got to do something to change that up. So, I guess that's what I'd say.
So you would say that's
think about where you live and where you're going to send your kids to school. Maybe Canada is different though.
We hit the max time. We were talking about where are you going to live? It must have happened recently.
We talked too much.
No, we're good. Carry on. What were you saying? Rule of thumb that you guys have
this great rule of thumb we've discovered is, so if you're going to live somewhere where you are the minority, right, or a new to you situation, it's best to take like a year of just living there and learning from people before starting anything on your own. And so I would say for a church planner, that's what I would suggest. For somebody who wants to be involved in justice work, go somewhere and learn for a year.
Second question, what would be some wisdom you'd give to somebody burning out? They've really been trying their best and they are feeling like they're crashing.
Okay, I love burnout people.
They're your people?
They're my peeps.
My peeps. My burnout peeps.
But I would say burnout is a result of pride. It means like you think you're God and that you can save people and that doesn't work out and then everything crumbles. Maybe that's just me.
No, that's good. That's really good.
I feel like burnout is a symptom of a savior complex.
Okay.
And so I'm right in the thick of in the thick of learning had to take that responsibility, which is pride, off of my shoulders. And so right now I'm really—
Where do you put it?
Yeah, I'm really interested
Give
in
it to
this
the
idea.
Lord?
Yeah.
Is that
I'm really interested in this idea of I'm loving my neighbors, I'm not saving the world.
Ah, that's good.
That's God's job.
That's God's job.
But I can love my neighbors. I'm also really into this idea of having these rhythms and routines of restoration, and so I don't ever want my life to be something I have to escape from, and yet at the same time, like I want to model healthy boundaries and you know, being in something for the long haul. And so instead of me being intentional, living in my neighborhood, ministering to my neighbors, I'm just somebody that lives there.
Yeah.
My neighbors are my friends. My daughter goes to school. I see people. You know what I mean? So just make it more, just a life that you want to live.
Right. Yeah. Being like a person who loves Jesus, not the Jesus person who's gonna be Jesus every moment of every day.
My friends still have really hard stories, but it's been also helpful for me to diversify my community. Yeah. So for a while there, you know, I was only working with refugees who lived in a homeless shelter. Like,
a little intense.
It was so intense. And so now just being like, that's not every refugee. That's not every immigrant. You know what I mean? Like there's so many more experiences out there. So diversifying in that way has been helpful too.
That's great. Thank you for hanging out.
Thanks for talking.
Being on a YouTube video.
My
go
first YouTube.
buy her book. It's The Simulator Go Home. Notes from a Failed Missionary Rediscovering Faith. D.L. Mayfield. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks. I can say I did YouTube now.
You did YouTube.